All right, BizzleCast listeners and other friends from YouTube, Facebook, people who happen to stumble across this. Uh, this is a somewhat rare BizzleCast video, and I'm introducing a brand new segment that I can't believe it took me 3 years to do. I normally do my sort of shorter rants. It's just BizzleCast quickies, but no longer. So this is the official first BizzleCast rant. And because I'm experimenting with video, by the way, the video you're seeing there is courtesy of Star Wars Connection. They were happy enough to not give me their permission to use it, but I'm sure they'll be happy that I'm giving them free promotion. So my first series of BizzleCast rants, I'm going to do them in short segments because that's how YouTube works, and it's the opposite of my podcast, which take forever. And it's just something that I really want to have my feelings together on. And since I don't want to do any video editing, I want to get out the thoughts while I have them. And so the initiation of a BizzleCast rant happening now also will be released in audio form. But for those of you who follow me or know me, you know that while I cover lots of nerd properties, Star Wars is by far my favorite and the most important to me, which is why when The Force Awakens and my personal favorite Rogue One came out a couple years ago and did gangbusters and got great reviews, fans loved it, made a ton of money, introducing female minority characters, went over at the time somewhat better than I thought, unlike this beautiful young lady, Rose Tico, who we're going to get back to, who's not been received well for the dumbest and pettiest of reasons. But then The Last Jedi happened and divided the fan base. And then Solo happened and nobody saw it. And now all the trolls and flamers and haters are coming out and saying, look, it's a movie that's supposed to be for white men and you've tried to make it not for white men and that's why it's not making money anymore, which is both totally insane, unscientific, offensive, and just out and out wrong. And maybe we'll get to some of those reasons. Now, Daisy Ridley as the first straight up female lead, even more than I won't get into the fact that for me, Princess Leia is clearly on equal footing from Han and Luke. I felt that way growing up as a little kid. I don't understand people who say she's a side character. Some it's people who hate her, and some who are very, especially women who see the flaws of how a woman was portrayed on screen in 1977. I get it, both sides, but I think if you watch the movie closely, that is not indeed the case. And what I love about the new Star Wars movies is that they are, well, Rey's at the top with Kylo in terms of screen time and importance. You do have characters, like Rose, who are grunts but get screen time. Her sister Paige, Tally, Jess, the pilots, and everyone, have all that stuff. Obviously, Leia and her various roles. And so I do want to go on a longer diatribe about this adorable woman, Kelly Marie Tran, and how she. I'll just give you the basics here, and then I'm gonna lay out the wider vision. Essentially, she was given the hardest and arguably worst or least compelling or least interesting material in The Last Jedi. That's what she was given, and she did an amazing job. And so people who hate The Last Jedi hate, what the faces of Star Wars have become and are looking for things to hate and rip on. It was very easy to just go straight at her. And we still see this happening with Natalie Portman, who somehow gets blamed for George Lucas's somewhat shoddy work with the prequels. So we're going to talk about Kelly Marie. But the general rant here is people are drawing the wrong conclusions from things, which is, Rogue One made half of what Force Awakens made because Rogue One didn't have any of the original cast. It had no real Jedi, very little lightsabers, and was a dark war movie where tons of people died. And I just think it was one of those movies that people were either like, this doesn't feel like Star Wars, even though when you watch it, it feels exactly like Star Wars. But in terms of Luke and the Jedi, so I don't want to see it for that, or it's too dark. I don't want to be depressed. I want all my Star Wars movies to be uplifting, which they really haven't been so far. Rogue One's just the most direct throat punch. Or I saw it once and it was good, or I enjoyed it, or it was great, but once was all I needed. Now, in the aftermath of the unhappiness with Last Jedi and people not caring to see Han Solo, people are completely reevaluating how they feel about Rogue One. It's jumping up on people's list. It's been on mine, the top since I saw it, and now it's my favorite Star Wars movie of all time. But what happened with The Last Jedi was that The Last Jedi was supposed to be the coming out party of Luke Skywalker. And many of the old school fans assumed, even though we were being told well in advance to not assume anything about Luke, that while he might be a little, like Yoda or Obi-Wan style, off kilter, that he was essentially going to be a hero by midway through the movie and kicking ass with lightsabers, and that's not what happened at all. And I really think the killing of Han Solo, then the lack of Han Solo, and then the way that Mark Hamill was treated like an actual organic movie character, where the director and writer felt like going in a different direction than what people expected, rather than give us what we think we wanted. And that's what divided everyone. And Mark Hamill's like one of the most outspoken liberals and progressives on the planet. He hates all this stuff. He's constantly defending all the other actors and actresses and equal rights and fair treatment and the Me Too movement and so forth. The bottom line was he was the blonde-haired, blue-eyed, idol of middle America in the early 70s and early 80s. And so a lot of the hatred of Star Wars are people who aren't seeing the movies. We can tell from Han Solo that people aren't seeing the movies. I would question whether some of these, supposed old school fans have even watched the originals in a long time. All the political themes, all the sort of progressive things that George Lucas tried to work in. And I think it's going to settle by the time Star Wars Celebration happens next year, and then Episode 9. I think it's going to settle down, and we're going to get these are the Star Wars fans, and they're willing to go with Disney's new vision. And it's not going to be 2 billion A Force Awakens, but it's also not going to be 300 million Han Solo. The average great Star Wars movie, I think, is going to settle in somewhere between the billion plus of Rogue One and the 1.3 billion plus of Last Jedi. I think it's how it should be. I don't think for Star Wars movies to stay true to themselves in terms of their representation, their political views at times, the fact that it's the darkest and most complicated property that Disney owns, in order to maintain those movies, you might think Last Jedi is trash, but you like Rogue One. Well, guess what? In order for us to keep having Rogue One-like movies, we need to go darker, be more experimental, and sometimes it's going to work for everyone, sometimes it's not going to work for everyone, but you're not going to make $2 billion when it's not Avatar: The Force Awakens, which, let's be honest, was a feel-good Star Wars movie, or The Avengers. And so I think Disney is prepared to work within this. But I think it's my final thought for this opening video is that we need to trim the fat. We need to just cut out all of these hateful trolls and say, you aren't Star Wars fans. We don't care if you even like just one Star Wars thing, you are technically a Star Wars fan. But if you go around spending most of your time trying to bring other people down against the things, have hate against the things they love, and try and get them to hate it, because somehow that's important to you, that other people hate the things that you hate or once loved and no longer liked, then you lose your fan status. Because fans stick together. Fans have conversations. If you listen to my podcast at BizzleCast.com, if you check the copy, I have people from all over the world, men, women, different ages, people who like Star Wars, people who don't like Star Wars. We have debates about this stuff all the time. Debates about Star Wars is one of the best things ever. It's arguably, talking about Star Wars is better than the Star Wars movies. And we certainly spend more time doing it. So just because you like A New Hope, you hate everything else, and you spend most of your time trying to stifle debate and turn debate into argument, into hatred, into flaming people, into trolling people, yeah, you should have your fan status revoked. There's no card I can take away from you until you break the law. Hopefully you'll break a petty law and go to jail for a year and rethink yourself. But as my final thought, as I've talked about with my podcast, in real life, I don't have that many nerd friends. Most of my nerd friends are through the interwebs. I do have friends who like Star Wars who aren't generally nerds. But I don't know anyone in my real life, whether they like Star Wars, love it, are okay with it, or aren't into it, who hate it and think it's stupid. And so I want to know where all these hateful assholes come from because I don't run across them in real life. So thank you for joining me. BizzleCast.com. Be back on soon with BizzleCast Rant number 2. Peace out.